when it comes to one-day classic racing.
Well, it's all about what I said a little earlier with George Hincapie, Phil. He's got the age and experience in this race, but he's also got added to that the motivation. Of these races, that he loves the tradition of these races, and that's what motivates him, probably motivates this week of racing than any other week in the whole of the season.
This is George's week. He's won Gent-Wevelgem. That was his first big one-day classic win. He's been coming close for years now in both the Tour de Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, and there's still time to land it. He rides now on Team BMC, and I bet he never thought he'd be in the same peloton as Lance Armstrong ever again, his old friend and teammate of the years gone by. But he is, and Lance could be back in because he's in these chasing groups.
Those are the casualties of the Patersberg, which the riders have just gone over. It's really split the main field, and it's all really started, as I say, every year, and I suppose I'll continue to say that. It all starts with the aggression on the slopes, which is not really a very long climb in itself, but it's what happens with the crosswinds that batters the riders.
Well, I don't think we're seeing the final shape of the chase group just yet, but I can tell you that if it does work out, there's going to be a few shocks. There's still some names up behind here. This little group not quite working as well together as I would expect. I'm just trying to work out who that B-box rider is, because again, they're on such a high, the B-box squad, that they keep on winning race after race, and they've got a man in the break here. Well, taking on food.
There's too many big names in this group, unfortunately, Phil, and they don't want to work together. They've probably not eliminated some of the guys that they wanted to. Hincapie looking over, and he's trying to encourage everybody to work, as is Tom Bonen, who sees this as an advantage to going to the Koppenberg without any of the confusion of having 40 or 50 other riders trying to be in the first 2 or 3 positions.
Well, it's advantage the strong man. That's the way it is in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. And if they can get up the Koppenberg, it's the others who'll have to try and break the peloton to reach them, and it's a lovely position to be in. Keep on searching. There's 1 or 2 riders crossing that gap, but there's still a real pursuit behind. And look at the size of that peloton. It's still about 25-30 riders strong just now. Breschel looking up. There's a little bit of discussion going on here, and that is not the way we want to go. Is this Leif Hoster here?
Yep.
So Hoster is looking around. They need a big result, Hoster, because the Lotto team, which is now the Omega Pharmacy team, really need a big result. The press are giving them a real big heartache just now.
Yeah, well, that's the way the press are in Belgium. They don't mind giving them a big slamming at all. There's just 2 kilometres now, Phil, to go to the start of the climb of the Koppenberg.
10 riders here. I think the Lambau credit rider tacked onto the back was in the breakaway. I think it's David Boucher who's come to the back and right to the back of the break. There's going to be a coming together here, which is going to bring David Miller and I think Tyler Farrer back into the thick of the action as well. Just looking down, didn't see Lance then, but you might have spotted him, did you, Paul?
Well, that's the Weg Omlenging. That's the deviation there to the left-hand side there. That's where the motorbike cameramen and all of the team cars have to go. So we are going to go over the Koppenberg, and these riders in a group slightly further back, looking out to see whether or not they can judge the distance between themselves and the leading group of riders.
Well, there's the helicopter, the only man that's going to show us the way round now, because they've sent everybody else off course on purpose as we head to the narrow climb of the Koppenberg, and then the Tour de Flanders will start again here. Well, the effort being made by that group of 10 have put them in one situation. That's at the front on the narrow road, which is very, very important right now as we climb up this little ridge, which will take us over to those houses, onto the Koppenberg itself. Nice place to live, difficult place to ride your bike. Back with the leaders, the survivors of the 8 men. There should only be 4, and there are. There's the names for you. The evergreen, Garcia Acosta, is at the back just now in the black.
Netjev is still in there. He's in the blue and white jersey with the yellow helmet for Team Katusha. And these riders will have the advantage of moving on to the cobblestones of the Koppenberg in the first 4 places. They may well find themselves locked into the main fold by the time they get to the top of it, because this is going to be a beast of a climb. You can see how nasty these roads are here. These are farm roads, really. They're not used by major traffic, and they get battered by the very difficult winters that Belgium suffers.
Well, very soon now they're going to be in the sights. They're making the right turn to start the climb. 72 kilometres done. The 4 leaders will struggle on this climb. They must struggle on this climb now. They've been away for about 180 kilometres in the lead today. Originally 8, down to 4. And now they're feeling the real bite from the Ronde van Vlaanderen. It's only 600 metres, Paul, but it can change the face of the race.
You may well get a chance from this angle just to see how steep this climb is, because it's 22% at the top.
So we're looking at the leaders of the Tour de Flanders now as they start the climb of the Koppenberg, this cobbled route with 72 kilometres to go. The main lead chase group, which at the moment is about 10 riders, have got these four virtually in their sight now, but they are desisting, and I think there might be a few more than 10 when they get themselves onto the bottom of the climb as well.
Ooh, a little bit of dampness over on the left hand side. You can see what these riders need to make sure of now is they keep over to the right hand side or the left hand side of the road that they're coming up, because this road is slippery. The only way really to ride it, you've got to sit down, you have to have the power.
They are on the slopes now of the Koppenberg, these cobbled stones. They can hardly get out of the saddle, it is so steep. And in fact, this is the leader of the four survivors of the break, Gussinen, who seems to be sitting on that saddle and pulling away. As we draw down to the bottom, the peloton, for the first time in the best part of 200 kilometres, have the head of the race in their sights. And they are all there and battling for places.
Second place there, Tom Bone and Matty Breschel up alongside him. These riders now, the way to ride this is you've got to sit down, you've got to be a powerhouse, you've got to have a big engine to get up a climb like this, but you've also got to avoid the damp part of the climb, because that's when you start to get tyre slip. Once you lose momentum and stop, you can't get on your bike again, you've got to walk to the top. Look at Bonen and Breschel here.
Well, Bonen's side of the Koppenberg in the past, but he's right up at the sharp end right now. A trouble for the B-box rider who can't get his rhythm at all. The quickest way is to get off and walk and even run and jump back on over the top. The camera belies just how steep it is. That gives you a better idea. This is a real struggle. That was Gussinen who's going to be first over the top.
Well, somebody's often walking or running, I have to say, and once you lose the momentum, this climb, Phil, to put it into perspective, it is so steep you can't get going again. You just cannot get back on the bike. You don't have the power or the gears to get going. And if somebody said to me this morning there wasn't going to be any wind in Belgium today, look at the Flemish Lion flags.
And look at Matty Breschel here and Tom Bonen, who've tamed the Koppenberg here. They've gone over the top together. Bonen is looking immensely strong today. Matty Breschel is actually saying that he is the man to win for Saxo Bank and not Fabian Cancellara. And right now it's Breschel who's playing his card, the champion of Denmark.
And Bonen right up there alongside him. This is quite strange. We've got the two big teams that we talked about, Phil, before the start of the race. Saxo Bank with two leaders, Quickstep with two leaders. Now, which way was the tactics going to work out? I wonder what Fabian Cancellara will do.
Well, there's still a lot of big names that can counter this move, and not least Thor Hushovd.
Hincapie was still in that group of riders with Fabian Cancellara, so not too far off the mix.
And this is the chaos. These boys only just contacted the Bonen group at the base of the climb, and now they've been split off again, so another chase will ensue at 70 kilometres to go.
If you're looking for a yellow helmet, well, there it is, and that is Lance Armstrong. He's not too far away. He's got himself over the Koppenberg, so he's still pretty much in contenders with some of the top riders in the Ronde van Vlaanderen here this afternoon.
Well, I have to say, we've seen chaos, but I think this is the year that we've seen a lot of chaos in this race. It's been really tough for the riders to hold position, and so far it has all been hats off to the Saxo Bank squad, who have caused most of the trouble.
The damage is what they cause. Look, this is what's happening over at the right-hand side. That's the rider from B-Box, and once you get stuck in the side of the road, you can't get your bike going again. You've got to walk to the top. That's why this climb we're talking about here, can I remind you, this is still only climb number 6 of 15. There's still some brutes of Flanders to come before we get to the end.
Just struggling there as well once again is Lars Bak from HTC Columbia. Now all of these boys have come to a stop. You can virtually write off their hopes now, because by the time they get to the top, by the time they remount, they will have very little hope of catching up, and it looks as though David Miller is in the thick of the trouble there.
Well, this is it's an unbelievable climb. It was taken out of the Tour of Flanders a few years ago, and a little anecdote, by the way, because Lance Armstrong came to ride this climb the other day in training, and it was repaved, and some of the old cobbles were held back, and one of them was given to Armstrong as a present. I wonder if he'll have to worry about excess baggage.
I think he'll pass it back after this, but he has gone over in a pretty good position, Lance, and with a little bit of hard work with the group he's in, they could contact the leaders again. Now we can only go where our cameras take you, and at the moment we have 4 leaders. We have a chase of Bonen and Breschel, and then back to the first serious chase group.
The brown shorts at the back there of the AG2R rider, well, that is Nicolas Rousseau. He's one of the riders who was in that 8-man breakaway. A change of fortune, really, from the front of the race to the back.
So as the riders continue to reorganise themselves to just take a look at each other and find out who is where and who is missing, and the answer is Bonin and Breschel are missing at the moment. They should be the first two riders to contact the breakaway, but as we look down here, Bonin is in this group, so he's got a few others around him now for company.
Well, the next climb, and they're coming thick and fast, I've got to say, Phil, is going to be climb number 7. That's Steenbeke. Now, this is one of the climbs that's changed in its position in the race, because they've moved the Molenberg a little bit further down the series of hills, and there's a big section of cobblestones before the riders get to the Molenberg. The organisers have done that on purpose. Well,
the grand old man of the cycling world, Vincente Garcia da Costa, is now missing from that group. As we now go a fair way down, I think it's Sebastian Rossler again who's coming up now. He's had a pretty tough day out there, and I think his race is done. These are the three leaders who've got themselves out front. Floris Goossenen of the skill team, Michael Ignatieff of Katusha, and also with him is Joost van Lenen of Vakantie. And there he is. That is Garcia da Costa. I don't think he's any ambition to catch up with his erstwhile breakaway. He must be very, very tired at 69 kilometres to go now. So he's going to fall away. It's 3 versus the rest.
Well, there's a lot of climbs to go, still 9 climbs left to go. That's the front of the main field. It's swelled in numbers quite a bit there, and I wonder if Lance Armstrong is still in contact with that group. George Hincapie certainly is. He's ridden very attentively. He's made sure that he's in contact all of the time. Obviously, you can guess that Juan Antonio Fletcher is in that leading group, because the riders on the front setting the tempo are Team Sky.
Feeding time for the leaders now. They broke away at around 2 kilometres into the race. It's 262, and they're still in the lead, almost 200 kilometres ahead of the field, and it has been a very active field today. They gave it 30 minutes, and then Saxo Bank decided they would have to start the chase, and as a result, we've seen a lot of guys lose position in the peloton. Well, they've earned their lunch today, Paul, there's no doubt about that, but they're going to have company in the next few kilometres.
They will, but they will be able to say at the end of this day that they have been at the front, and they were the riders who were the first to conquer the old Quaremont, the Paterberg and the famous Koppenberg, and they have formed the race as very much the early morning breakaway often does. But what it's done, I think, Phil, has made this a very tough race so far, and it's been toughened by one team in particular, that's Team Saxo Bank, and Stuart O'Grady, the Australian, really has pounded out a very nasty rhythm to make everybody else suffer.
Yes, and Matti Breschel has come up as good as Fabian Cancellara, so they've got 2 strong players there in the team. It looks as though Steyn de Volder was not up to that initial attack, because he wasn't there when Tom Bonin forced it, and he's probably back now because the group is quite big again, but he wasn't there at the crucial move. It didn't work on this occasion, and he's reduced the peloton though down to a very big field, to what looks now to be around about 25 riders. One of those will win the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Irish flag down there as well.
Oh, by the way, that yellow helmet, the Livestrong helmet,
is there.
That is worn by Lance Armstrong, is just there at the back end of the main field. So despite all of the pressure that's been put on, the former 7-time Tour de France winner, Phil, is still in that group.
Well, they can't take away pure talent, and Lance has plenty of that as we now do another 2 kilometre of the Maria Borrestraat, which is another little bone shaker now.
And that's going to take the riders to the next climb of the day, and that is a cobblestone climb of the Steenbeke. And this is 2 kilometres in length. Smooth, I'd have to say, Phil, this is a cobblestone boulevard for the riders.
Yes, it must almost feel like it's a paved road, this, it's so smooth. But Goossenen at the back here for Skill Shimano. He's shown the Tour de France organisers today that his team should have been selected perhaps for the Tour de France. I can't say I've got a feeling either way. I think the Tour de France has had a very difficult decision to make, and they've had to go in favour of the World Champions team, Team BSC, and of course Team Sky are right on the front now and driving for Fletcher.
Well, Tyler Furrow's right up there, filling around about 8th to 9th position. I just spotted him riding alongside George Hincapie, so he's enjoying his Belgian campaign this year.
Well, we've always said it, but one day, and it might be today, Tyler Farrar is going to win one of the world's great races, and there's none greater in the single-day classics, as some would argue Paris-Roubaix, but to a Belgian, it's this one, the Tour of Flanders. It is an incredible race. You can't cheat your way to victory in this race, Paul, because even when you're in the peloton, you're riding for yourself.
It's a question of survival, especially once you come down to the end, because you've got to fight before every section of cobblestones. You have to fight before every climb of the day. You've got to stay at the front end of the main field and make sure that you stay in contact. Nice to see there, number 161, Lance Armstrong. You know, he's always enjoyed this race because he's always enjoyed racing in Belgium. One of his early great victories was the Flèche Wallonne, which is on the Mur de Huy, the other side of Belgium, a different kind of race. But I think Armstrong enjoys the tradition of something like the Tour of Flanders and the fame and the stories.
I think it was 2003 when we met him in Amiens during the Tour de France, a day after he'd come across all the cobblestones in northern France. And I said, Lance, you rode really well on the cobblestones. He said, I love them. I just love hurting everybody else. Well, life is perhaps not quite as young as he was then, so now he's sitting on the back, but he's read the move and he's right there, and things can happen in his favour. 700 metres now of this one. So again, as we pick up the peloton here, the gap now is 37 seconds off 3 leaders. They're closing in. Lance Armstrong is at the back of this group. He has come across with no trouble at all. You can just see him there, tagged on to the rear of the field, as we've got the Sky Boys now pushing for Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Well, Fletcher right in there. Chris Sutton is in this group as well, and there you can see moving around the outside. It's the Lotto squad. This is the Steenbeek Dries, only 700 meters long. Its maximum climb is 7%. The average is 5%. George Hincapie is in this group as well, so is Tyler Farrar, but amazingly just a little bit further up you can see Lance Armstrong enjoying his Easter Sunday.
So far of the big names, we're still looking to see if Thor Hushoft has made the split and Steen de Volder, because there are 2 riders we haven't seen much of in this last half hour of racing, but all the rest seem to be here, and Armstrong has really read it well. Hard work being done here. They're trying now to force an issue where we have about 25 riders slowly pulling clear. How those breakaways are staying clear of this race, I really don't know right now, because they've been in front for just on 200 kilometres, and the 3 of them are still holding 32 seconds.
You've got to love the organisation, Phil, because there's 2 kilometres only separating the top of the Steenbeek Dries and the Tyenberg, and theoretically this is not a cobblestone section of the route, but looking from our height in the sky here, it would appear to me that those are cobblestones down there.
And thankfully we're across that railroad crossing because it's unguarded and they wouldn't be stopping the train today, so the leaders are through, the breakaway is through. Only a half a minute gap now between them. Even our cameraman now, and goodness, you've got to say well done to the camera boys, how they keep up with the action and hold that camera so steady on these roads. I really don't know.
Well, the next climb is also one of the very steep climbs of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, Tour of Flanders. It's the Tyenberg. It's almost 16%. Bonen there, you can see in his national champion of Belgian jersey, riding in about 8th position, black, yellow and red. George Hincapie, American national champion, he's right in there. There's Tyler Farrar just picking his way through there. Fabian Cancellara, all of the big names right up here.
Tom Bonen looking a little bit calmer now. He was making a huge effort earlier on, but Roger Hammond, who's also ridden well in this race in the past, the British rider, he is now tagged on to the back of this group. It looks like Roger may be having another good day in a classic.
Well, he's one of those rare English riders who can speak Flemish perfectly. He's spent a lot of his time living here in Belgium, so he knows this race and he gets motivated by this race. And I think, again, we talked a little earlier about George Hincapie's motivation for races like this. There's Hincapie. Look at that. In 5th position again, Phil. Today feels to me like a very special Tour of Flanders because there's a battle for every cobblestone section. Hincapie going round there right on the wheel of Fabian Cancellara.
Well, the pattern can change so quickly, you don't know when things are going to go wrong. Here are the 3 leaders, still just about out of sight here now as we start the next climb, and it's Goossenen. He really climbs very well. This is the Tyenberg, a cobble brute again, and he just puts his head down and just thinks of those pedals as pistons, and he pushes on them. And Ignatieff just behind him as well.
Sky organised 1, 2, 3 at the front end of the main field, and that's for Juan Antonio Fletcher, hoping to be the first Spanish rider ever to win the Ronde van Vlaanderen. In the middle, Matti Breschel. There's so many national champions riding at the front end of this group. This really is the creme de la creme.
There are 4 right here. Breschel, Denmark, Cancellara, Switzerland, Hincapie, USA, Bonen of Belgium, and they're right on the sharp end. This is an incredible event.
Phil, I've always loved this event, but I've got a feeling there's something special going to happen this afternoon. I've got some serious goosebumps going down my back.
Well, we're looking down at Breschel, who seems to be immensely strong here as he continues. He looks round, he looks straight into the face of Bonan. Fletcher is on the left of our picture in the black jersey. The big favourites are not making mistakes, but I haven't seen the winner for the past 2 years yet, De Volder.
Well, De Volder struggled after winning this race last year. He won it 2 years in a row, and then all of a sudden he went on to be a possible Tour de France top 10 contender. He failed there. He's really suffered to find the form that brought him to this win last year. He's looking at, well, you were talking about him, Phil. Here he is, and he's in the wrong position.
And he's moving forward very rapidly here. He's just scooting past there. Le Quatre, the Frenchman on Radio Shack, rapidly closing gaps. He may have got caught in the back group. He's making his way through as best he can just now. Well,
this is a man trying to get himself back into the race. There's Armstrong over on the right-hand side, so we are in the leading group. De Volder has pulled himself inside out, Phil, to get himself back into the race. Stewie O'Grady there just slipping back, but I don't think we'll complain about that after the work that he's done.
No, incredible day out for O'Grady. There he is, 178. He's going to hang on as long as he can now and then make his best way home as he can. Meanwhile, up here with the leaders now. I wonder if the message has got through. Stijn de Volder's coming up.
Philippe Gilbert on the front now, just looking over his shoulder. He's a great tip for the French-speaking part of Belgium to possibly get the victory here this afternoon. He's certainly not afraid of the cobblestone classics at all.
So no decision on the Tyenberg, but all of the favourites seem to be right in the pack, and nobody giving away just how strong they are just yet. 28 seconds the gap. Another attack from Vacances Soleil now from the breakaways. They come over the top of the Tyenberg. Another team not selected for the Tour de France, determined to say we should have been.
Well, you were a race organiser yourself, Phil, for many years at the milk race in Great Britain. I have to say, it is hard to pick the teams, especially nowadays when there are so many good teams who are aggressive, who want to go out and race. What do you do so far ahead of the event?
Well, absolutely right. And Johnny Hogeland here, he's a Dutchman on a Dutch team. He had 2 wins last year. He won the Tour of West Flanders as well as a stage. So it looks like he knows the roads just about as good as anyone. He knows what to expect. And he's obviously feeling quite frisky at this stage.
25 seconds, 24 seconds is the advantage, but only just around the corner there. You can see the front end of the main field. These riders will now continue to ride at the front end of the race because although they know, and this is where the economics of the sport of professional cycling comes in, Phil, the riders off the front end of the main field, the 3 riders who have survived, will want to stay up from the front for as long as possible to get some TV time for their sponsors.
You bet your life. And it looks as though they've just caught the peloton here, the leading peloton. Taking a little bit of a break now as they start to rethink their tactics. Here are the 3 leaders, Native, Guschen and Van Leyden. And as I said, there's the peloton now. They've seen them coming. They know that the inevitable is going to happen, but nonetheless, just on 200 kilometres up in front. Incredible.
It certainly is, but the big names are being very attentive so far from the finish, and I think there's a lot of men think they've got a very good chance of getting themselves a victory. That's Hoster, Leif Hoster, just on the right-hand side. 3 times that man, Phil, has finished 2nd in the Tour of Flanders. Will he break his duck? And that's a cricket term, by the way, for a man going out to not get 0 runs.
He's one of the few cyclists in the world who's finished 2nd in this great race and cried because he actually had lost it, because he's been 2nd, as Paul says, 3 times, and all he wants is just 1 win. It's a big ask. I mean, Eddie Merckx says he doesn't like this race because he's only won it twice.
Well, you are talking about a man who won Milan-San Remo 7 times on that occasion.
And Liège 5, absolutely. Anyway, this is a very select group. They've tested each other on the climbs. They've split, they've yo-yoed, they've come back into the group. Now, we're not running out of hills yet. We've got plenty in store for the riders, and we've got 62 kilometres to decide. But there are looking to me to be some very strong riders in this group today.
Well, you might have said that Stuart O'Grady was disappearing from the race, but I just saw him scuttling up the outside. That's what being a teammate, Phil, is all about. You do go through a hard patch, but you do realise you've got to stay in the race for as long as possible to try. There he's in 4th place.
It is amazing.
You're staying there for as long as you possibly can to offer as much assistance to the team leader on the day. And the team leaders, I have to say, for Saxo Bank are Cancellara and, of course, Matti Breschel.
Oh, and that looks like we're very close there. That was Voigtler coming through, I think, on the inside. The last man, well, he's moved off the back of the riders now, is Kurt Assel Arvidsson. He, don't forget, he's recovering from a broken collarbone and he's riding superbly well, but his team is probably inspiring him.
Well, just sitting at the back there for Radio Shack is Gregory Rast. He's the big rider we've seen formerly an Astana squad, and he's a rider who we can expect to do a lot of work in the Tour de France. I'm sure he'll be part of that 9-man squad in July.
But what about Thomas Voeckler? He's had a 3rd place overall in the Tour of Sardinia. He's having a very, very good start to the season. He certainly isn't a classics rider, at least results say he isn't, and he's never had a top 10 finish in this event. But he's here, and his team, they couldn't be more confident right now, because every time they ride they supply a winner.
This is Chris Sutton on the front for Team Sky. It's great to see these riders getting... Look at the organisation of Team Sky. Let's not forget, this is the first year of Team Sky. They've put themselves together an extremely strong squad. Signing up riders like Juan Antonio Fletcher, I think, was a major coup for them, because it gives them credibility going into these one-day classics. But they've got the organisation very quickly, as did Team Cervelo test team last year. It's because of what is put into the time of investing, getting the guys together, getting them to training camps, getting them to expeditions, so they can have that team building, and it shows in races like this, and that, I think, is the strong side.
Journalists are saying anybody who has trouble on this section of road will be finished as far as this race goes. Who has trouble? The outstanding favourite Cancellara, and he's getting back.
But the calmness of the team manager, the calmness of the mechanic, that's the important thing. You've got to be well drilled. You can't panic in a moment like this, because if the rider starts to panic, it scares the mechanic. The mechanic makes a mistake. He drops the bottle, he drops the bike. But that was so well carried out, it was almost perfect.
Totally premeditated. 8 seconds I counted as he was back and running again. Now Cancellara at the moment, no need to panic too much. He's got the tail of the peloton in sight. He can just pedal himself back up. He chose the best possible place, I feel, there to make that change, and he's done it well. So 55 kilometres to go. Cancellara back in the bunch, and from this angle it looks quite a big bunch, doesn't it?
Certainly does. We're on the second of 3 sections of cobblestones which have been brought into the Tour of Flanders this year as the new change. There's another section after this at 1,500 metres, the cobblestone section of Kirkgate, taking the riders into Zwalm, and then they will go over climb number 10. And that, of course, is the climb of the Molenberg. Now, Matty Breschel, what's his problem? He's going back too.
No idea.
You know, that's what the race is all about. You can have everything go right, and then all
is
of a
he
sudden...
Is he looking for Fabian, who's just come in?
I think he's putting his arm up like that because he's got his own mechanical problems on board.
Well, this is racing in Belgium. The sun can be out 1 minute, and you can be in the biggest black hole the next. And it looks as though he's on his radio here now. So what are they going to do when radios aren't allowed next year in races like this? That'll be a big problem for some of these riders.
And
Matty
I think
Breschel.
a big disadvantage, because I wouldn't have wanted to lose a Fabian Cancellara in a race like this because of a mechanical incident.
So as we see, Breschel now comes to the back. He's waiting for the arrival, I think, of a team car. Well, the arrival there is of Thomas Voeckler. Didn't get back quite as quickly as Cancellara did, but he's got back nonetheless. And yo-yoing a bit. He doesn't like the cobbles so much, Thomas.
No, but he's a courageous rider. Don't forget, this is the guy who had the yellow jersey in the Tour de France for 10 days. And the last day that he held it, he lost it on the road about 10 times and dragged himself back into the race, and he held on to it by a fraction of a minute, maybe 7 or 8 seconds ahead of Lance Armstrong. Yeah. Armstrong went up to him at the finish and said, "Mate, good job today. You deserve to keep it for another day."
Absolutely.
But I'll have it tomorrow.
And he did. But even so, he said, if you try that hard, then you deserve the yellow jersey. That was a very nice gesture. Anyway, this is still the teammate of Lance Armstrong, who is still in that very select front bunch.
Gregory Rast.
Big Gregory Rast, the big man here, but he's still in the right place for Radio Shack. He's going to be an invaluable rider for Armstrong in the Tour de France. He can set a very high cadence and keep it going out mid-course in the Tour, and that's what he's there for.
Formerly champion of Switzerland, an extremely strong man, and an integral part of the Tour de France, what I suggest for Team Radio Shack. We're just looking at the back here. Matt Breschel looking a bit nervous. There's the race organizer going by, so maybe the team car's up alongside him.
Yeah, he's looking for his team car. He's looking for his car now. We've just turned, and they're now getting a full tailwind assistance run here. There's Saxo Bank. 1 minute their favourite Cancellara, and now the next minute their other favourite Breschel in trouble.
Oh, it's another
bike change.
Well, I don't know what's happened there, and you can see immediately there's a teammate stopped alongside, and this is not as fast as the previous one.
You could say that.
This is the problem. The bike's in the wrong place.
This is not good.
Oh, this is a slow change.
Well, they're trying to wrench it off the bike. It's not the widest of roads to do the job. Breschel is going to have to work hard. The advantage is the convoy is still going by, so he can get in amongst it now.
Bjarne Riis getting out of the car there. In fact, looked like Kim Anderson was the team manager there who was getting that sorted out. He's got a teammate alongside him. He's on a slightly smooth section of road here, but not very further up the road, Phil, is that next 1,500 metres, followed immediately by the Molenberg. They've got to get back into the race now and quick.
Well, at least he's got a teammate to give him a hand here, to drag him back up. Well, that's a great relief. Meanwhile, at the front here, you've got Team Sky. They really are along Kirkgate, bouncing on these pedals. And there are 4 riders from Sky here. Arveson is absolutely astounding me. How this man, just coming back from a broken collarbone, is riding so well today is absolutely tremendous. But there's 4 in a row. Cancellara is just behind. He's pushed himself right through to the front.
He's a strong man and he's motivated here this afternoon, and that's why he's dragged himself right up to the front. But the big question now is, can Matti Breschel get himself back into the fold?
Well, this is Kalilov here, Mikhailo Kalilov, and don't those cameras give you marvellous images these days, right into his face. It looks as though the cameraman's on his bike, but it's not quite that so.
Well, Phil, talking about Arveson, again, I talked about the coup that Team Sky got by, of course, signing Juan Antonio Fletcher, but also by signing this man, Arveson, because he talked about retirement. Well, this is not bad for another guy who was looking at retirement, riding at the front of the Tour of Flanders and hammering out the pace.
Absolutely. And just off to the right there, Bernard Eisel, too, the favourite for HTC Columbia. We haven't seen much of Mark Cavendish today. Early on, he was at the tail of the bunch and didn't look too happy. I have to say, though, that Team Sky have really ridden well. Now, this is the chase of Breschel down there, is it?
Yeah.
Still trying to get them into contact. It's going to be, in fact, he's sitting up there at the moment. I wonder if he's developed another problem.
Well, no, he's not panicking. The best thing to do is allow a number of cars to come in front of you, then use the cars slowly, because the race referees will turn a blind eye if you use each car that's in front of you by 10, 15 seconds, and that allows you to get back into the main field without really digging too much into your reserves and pushing too hard. And then you can... might take a little bit longer to get yourself into the main field, but it's a lot easier way of doing it.
Well, this man here, Matthew Heyman, today has ridden like 10 men for Team Sky. He's been driving the front of this peloton and riding extremely well indeed. Sky today have looked like absolutely a complete team. This is the best I've ever seen them ride. I know they've only been going since January, but I've never seen them ride so well as today.
Well, they were pretty impressive in the Cancer Classic in Adelaide in January, but that's not quite the same level of race as the race that we're witnessing here this afternoon, and they have ridden like a top international Pro Tour squad.
They most certainly have. I'm just trying to see if I can just catch any other favourites in this group at the moment. George Hincapie is certainly here and looking very cool and collected. I think he'll be very pleased with the race so far today.
Well, they're all there. Leif Hostel just a little bit further up behind him. Cancellara at the front end of the main field. Bonen, Hincapie. These guys are all staying very close to the front.
Still looking for Hushoff now. They just found him. No?
Yes.
Is that him there?
Yeah.
Second wheel?
Yeah. Looks as if he's got a problem as well. And that's Dominic Roland trying to pace him back.
Then he must have been in the group. We didn't see him, but he's now got a problem. And unless he's actually coming across the gap. Our camera just picking him out. He's behind this long line of riders here, which is getting slightly bigger at the moment. 51 kilometres to go. Now, what's the next obstacle?
Well, the next obstacle is the Molenberg, and that was part of the change in the race here this year. They switched it around and putting it a little bit later on. It's only a 300-metre climb, 15%, but it's a climb that in the past has been very decisive. And the idea of putting this 3.5 kilometres of cobblestones in between the two was to try and make sure that there wasn't such a big group going into the Molenberg.
Well, Lars Boom is still in this group. 101 sitting at the back. Good number, that, isn't it? 101. As he sits right at the back of the race. Who could surprise? He's surprised everybody in Paris-Nice in the Prologue time trial. And he's been a world champion at cyclocross. Matthew Heyman just getting on with the job, but the guys forget to follow him here, so he's going away a little bit. And that's Lance Armstrong, far left of our picture. Also riding in the right place at the right time without doing too much work.
Well, the interesting thing about Armstrong in the race today, Phil, is he doesn't have to do anything. He's not riding as a favourite. He's not riding to win the Tour of Flanders. He can ride a race and enjoy it and see how the race develops, and that may well pay out into his advantage.